All right, welcome everyone to the very first digital economics call. This is a brand call, and the way these calls are structured is that we're going to go over like big picture what we should be focusing on. We're not necessarily going to go deep into what we've been learning in the curriculum because that's there, right? But after we go over just a few things, look at some good brands specifically on Twitter and break down like why they do well. After all of that, we'll open the room for any questions, and then we can do some one-to-one stuff. But as a whole, the first 20 minutes will be just talking about branding as a whole and all of the things revolving around that. And then after, questions. So if you have a question pop up along the way, feel free to pop it in the chat on the side, just so you don't have to keep it in your head. And then we can go through those and answer those first. And then once those are gone through, people can unmute themselves and we can go about it that way. But it is clearly more organized if we keep it all in the chat, just so people aren't talking over one another, especially since we have a good group here. So the first thing that I want to go over before I start sharing my screen is just the three things that I think about when I think about branding, because to me, I've called myself a brand advisor in the past, but I've never formally studied branding. I don't think I've formally studied any of this stuff. It's mostly through just personal experience, learning from others, networking with people, learning from them, and kind of just piecing together what I think branding is. Because if you want to study branding, you can go and look up an article and you can read like what traditional branding is all about. And that's very good information. But I want to talk about like when I see something, when I see a person or just a brand on social media, like what sticks out to me and what I believe makes the brand. So the first thing is the brand mission, right? The brand mission is what almost everyone talks about when they talk about branding, right? And a mission to me is, what are you leading people towards, right? If you want a brand, if you want to gain a following, then you have to become a leader of some sort. And so to me, that's always what is the big goal that you are chasing after, and like kind of what lessons are you passing down along the way, and those lessons kind of form the path that people take towards that goal. And so in the actual curriculum, we talked about our life's work, and we talked about like what is the big problem that you want to solve in this world, right? And the thing with that is that a problem comes up when you're pursuing a specific goal. So in order to solve a big problem, you have to have a big goal that you are chasing after. I've talked about this a few times recently in like my YouTube videos, where the goal can really be anything, right? And most people are going to have very similar goals, where I give the example of financial freedom being a goal. Now, the mission or the path that someone takes to get there is going to be very individual, because for me, I could study, I did study at the start freelancing, and then it went into agency, and then I took this route, and then it went to personal branding and all this other stuff. But some other people, they study investing, or they study real estate, or they study even like affiliate marketing, or whatever they feel like doing in order to pursue that goal of financial freedom, right? So when we're talking about the domain of mastery in the curriculum itself, those interests, regardless of whether it's like the make money interest or the interest that excites you or whatever it may be, those are all going to be fuel towards your goal, right? And I feel like this is a lot of people have this disconnect where it's like, my interest of spirituality or something, my random interest of spirituality doesn't really align with the goal that I'm trying to help people reach, or like it doesn't align with the thing that's actually going to make me money. And this belief really, it kind of gets eliminated with practice and just doing it. But you have to understand that that is the unique way of like if you can tie that into the big goal that you're trying to achieve, if it's like financial freedom or just location independence or even just having a healthy, strong family, how is that interest going to help you get there? And that's going to make it a lot easier to, like, say I want to write a tweet about spirituality, or I'm very inspired because I'm reading spiritual stuff. Then if I feel that way, where it's like it doesn't really align with the thing that's going to actually make this sustainable for me, then view it from that perspective. How is this spiritual teaching going to help me, let's say, make more money? We're talking about like the common examples of make more money and that kind of stuff, but you get the point. It can be applied to really anything. If I'm trying to build a healthy relationship, how is spirituality going to help that? How is building a business going to help that, right? If my main goal is building a healthy relationship with someone, how is me building a business going to do that if my other interest is business, right? So that's kind of the mission as a whole. And I wouldn't worry too much about putting this into words, because all of this is kind of, brand is displayed, right? Because in the next call, and as many of you I'm sure have already gone through in the curriculum, content is kind of what helps display your brand. It's what helps people attract people to your brand. A brand to me is kind of, it's not intangible, but it's like a feeling. It's a feeling that someone gets when they look at your profile, and they're kind of going through this thought process of, do I align with this guy? Do I, like, am I aligned? If I don't, I personally, I post on LinkedIn and I do stuff on LinkedIn, but the entire like brand of LinkedIn just isn't my style. Like, I don't like getting on LinkedIn. It's kind of, I don't know. I like interacting with people on Twitter. Like, if you've been on LinkedIn and you get on Twitter, you'll notice that it can get a lot more raw if you break into certain spaces on Twitter, but that's kind of my thing. But it doesn't take me away from doing stuff on LinkedIn. So I'm rambling a bit. So let's get on to like the brand feel, right? We'll go over two things. So brand feel and brand tone. And just so I don't take up too much time and avoid or like take away from time from us asking questions, I'll do this with examples. So let me pull these up and I will share my screen. Boom, boom. Okay. Joey, can you see this? Just thumbs up so I know it's showing. Okay. All right. So brand feel and brand tone. Brand feel, I feel like Solbra just does an absolutely incredible job. We're talking about the brand here. I know Solbra has some interesting takes that I like to think about and mull over, but as a whole, he is attracting a extremely specific type of person. He's attracting the, like, that's the thing. I can't even put it into words what it is. You're just kind of attracted to it, where he's doing kind of the old school aesthetics, bodybuilding. I remember he called himself a physical spiritualist at one point. So he's like kind of tying together bodybuilding, getting outside, kind of like the Pacific Coast feel, and everything related to that and all the topics. So it's somewhat esoteric and just interesting, right? So a lot of like, he posts, or he used to post a lot more images, but he'll post images that kind of give off the brand feel. So in terms of this, what I would recommend, or at least start to think about, is what are the like images or other things that would represent your brand. And the best way I can put this is like, if you were to have free control, free design over, let's say, your room or your house, and you had as much money to pour into the design of the house as a whole, what images would you hang up? What color scheme would you have? What is like, what kind of furniture would you have? And I would want you to think like, okay, what does this give off? Like, is it the kind of hippie vibe, like tiny home hippie vibe? Is it the woodland vibe with a big beard and like a flannel jacket and a like a lumberjack type feel, or something like that? And so that's kind of it. We're going to go over a few more. So Jack Butcher, because we talked about brand feel, that's something to just keep in mind and start keeping your eyes peeled for as you're going about all of this stuff. But brand tone, Jack Butcher is very interesting when it comes to this stuff. Now, I believe the base of his brand specifically was built from visualized value, but that doesn't take away from like the tone or the feel of his brand. So how do I, let's look at this one on the side. So if everyone understands what you're doing, you're late. And with this, like the tone of his brand is very minimalistic, not only in his designs or in the brand itself, but in his wording, right? He talks very like cryptic and kind of like, if you, I actually think he said this one time where he said brand is if you know, you know, like IYKYK, you know, the abbreviation for that. That's what he said. He just said brand is if you know, you know, because that's what he's kind of saying with his words. And now I wouldn't recommend this for a lot of people, especially at the beginning, because you'll just end up going over a lot of people's heads. But it's something to think about as you get more into the game, as you start growing more, as you start like having more leeway with what you can talk about, because as you grow a following and more people get to know you, they interact with you in the replies or the DMs, or just see you in the replies being yourself, then you start to get a lot more leeway with like what you can say, what you can talk about, and that kind of stuff. So Jack is just cryptic. Like I would encourage you to go through his profile and kind of see what I mean, where read through his tweets and see if you can get the point. And because he has a great way of like giving the point without exactly saying what the point is. So this is just one example that I like. I know Joey really likes Jack Butcher, and like 6 to 12 months ago, we were like sending tweets back and forth from his. And if we were to have sent it to anyone else but ourselves, they wouldn't get it. If I were to send it to my friend, he wouldn't understand what he's saying, right? So it's very niche without being niche in a sense. And that's a hard skill to master. I'm just realizing that more people have to be admitted. Keep that over there. Okay. But now one of our very own is Dan Goldfield. He's been killing it. He was just at 1,000 yesterday. So now he's at 1,079, doing great work, my man. But I really like his branding as a whole. And the thing I want to bring attention to is the colors, right? The colors and the just congruency between everything he does, because his profile picture, one, a lot of people can't pull this off. I've seen some people with like a weird background with their face on top, and it just doesn't match and it ends up looking a bit weird. But Dan does it well with this. He has the blue. And I don't know how to put it aside from it's very congruent, and he uses the same font, he uses the same color, he uses this like a very similar design with this stuff down here. And as a whole, he's just doing very well. It makes him seem professional. It makes him seem like he knows exactly what he's doing, and there isn't any randomness to it. And he's put time and effort into making sure that his designs are sleek, they get the point across, and they look professional. Like they look like he should have 100,000 followers. That's like one of my main metrics when I used to look at my own profile is, do I actually look like I should have 100,000 followers? And so a few others, let's go over Justin Welsh. And the main thing I want to bring to mind for both Justin Welsh and Sahil Bloom is their bio, right? So building a portfolio of one-person businesses to 5 million in revenue. Now, he's not saying, it's interesting how he positions this, because it's not like he's saying, I'm building a one-person business to 5 million in revenue, follow along for the journey. But I know that he's building, like this is him saying he's building a portfolio of one-person businesses to 5 million in revenue. And I can't tell if he means like he's building multiple businesses for himself or if he's helping other people, right? I could probably ask him and figure it out. But as a whole, he's kind of implying like, hey, you could be one of these one person businesses getting to 5 million in revenue, whether that's what he's saying or not. This is just his line. So it's something to think about, is like, how can you position the goal of your brand to imply that someone else is going to reach that goal without specifically saying, I'm going to help you reach this goal, or I'm going to reach this goal, follow me along. Both of those are equally valid, but I feel like this has a bit more potential for gaining a following, because it's the one where you're talking about yourself can potentially come off as like braggy, which I think that's not the case for most of them, but it's a potentiality. And then if you say, I'm going to help you get to XYZ, then you're kind of branching into like internet marketer territory, right? So this is a good way of like avoiding both. I think Justin as a whole is very good at positioning his threads, his bio, his products as a whole, and is someone you should pay attention to for that. And then the last one, before we get into some questions, is Sahil. So the thing about like branding or just what to talk about as a whole, I feel like Sahil kind of just like blows it out of the water. He doesn't have anything. Well, he kind of has something of authority here about being on ESPN, but in terms of business, he doesn't have anything that flexes his authority. He doesn't have like anything in specific that he talks about. He doesn't have like nobody really knows what he does, right? He kind of just says, exploring my curiosity and sharing what I learn along the way. So when people come to me and they say like, I want to talk about my interests, then the logical thing to do is position yourself so that you can talk about your interests, right? Or that you can talk about anything. If you want to talk about anything, then that's your niche. If you want to talk about anything, then you are the niche that talks about anything, right? So exploring my curiosity and sharing what I learned along the way, Sahil's niche is his curiosity, and he's sharing the interesting things that other people could become interested in. It's like those newsletters or those blogs where it's like you get one interesting fact every single day. It could be on anything. It could be on business, tech, whatever. It's because people can become interested in new things. So, but the thing with this is that when it comes to product, which we'll talk about in master's tier stuff, but like in general, Sahil has opened himself up to sell anything related to what he does, right? So he's built an audience without talking about how to build an audience. So that makes him even more of an authority to sell like how he's done a cohort where it's like, here's how you build an audience. I believe that's the only thing he's sold. He has newsletter sponsorships, and for a 125,000 subscriber newsletter, that's banking a lot of money. And then I know he does a lot, some other stuff in terms of like investing, and not exactly sure, but overall, I just wanted to show you Sahil to show that like, one, what your bio says is mainly to get people to follow, because content is what's going to introduce them to the why and the reason behind your interests, and why other people should adopt them as their own, or why it makes sense for them to actually become interested in these things, because you're implying that there's a desired outcome relating to that interest. So if he talks about audience building, the desired outcome is possibly more money, better career options, more being able to reach out to employers and almost get a response every single time, being able to reach out to a huge corporate CEO and almost get a reply every time. Like having 732,000 followers for Sahil, he could DM 95% of the population and get a reply within a day. And that to me is insane. So I had one more thing. Oh, okay. So one other thing that I want everyone to think about is, for branding, is kind of pulling inspiration from everyone. If you come across a brand that you like, what piece of that brand can you take and make it your own? Because with Sahil, I like this. I used to have in my own bio where it's like, I'm exploring human potential, one person businesses, and philosophy, sharing what I learn along the way. It's very similar, but mine's a bit more like focused on these things. So in terms of that, that's from Sahil, but my tone, I've started to like incorporate from Jack Butcher and Naval, and then kind of mix that with Alan Watts. So I truly feel like the next stage of not only personal brands, but just like people in general, they're kind of or just anyone. I feel like this is a good metric for really anything, is just pulling the traits or whatever it may be from the people that you like. So for Jack Butcher, I'm sure many of you can see like my minimalist style is very similar to his. My graphics are a bit not as minimal, but I love the black and white. I've always loved the black and white feel for most of my life. I'm not wearing it today, but 90% of days you can only catch me wearing black. That's like all I wear. So that's something I incorporated into my brand. And then another thing is like the tone of Alan Watts, like the people that you listen to the most or read the most, what makes their tone so interesting to you, right? These are just things to start thinking about, is like, what aspect of Alan Watts do I want to pull into my brand? Alan Watts is so good at making metaphors or creating metaphors to make complex topics seem simple. So that's something I'm actively working on in my newsletter, is like, okay, how can I incorporate more metaphors? How can I explain these things the way that he said it? Alan Watts is like, how would you explain this thing to a 4-year-old, right? Because a lot of writers get the advice of like, right at a 5th grade level, when in reality it should be like, explain this concept to a 5th grader. And then you're kind of forced to either speak in metaphors or images or things that the 5th grader would understand in order to get that point across to them. So that's kind of tangent about content. But then for me, so the brand mission, I've kind of pulled from like David Data, Stephen Kotler, even like Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. Joey knows all those people, that great authors. But it's kind of like actualizing your potential, right? That's a big thing of mine, is like actualizing your potential mentally, physically, spiritually, financially. And the one person business model or writing online or all of these other things is like my way of getting there. It's, what am I learning as I pursue these things? And how can I make those things my own once I have enough experience with them? So that's all I had to say for that.
Could I add something on to that?
Yes.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Cool. So I say this because this is something that I've struggled with in the past, and I've seen many people, of course beginners, but even people who are pretty far along in their journey, have this issue where they get stuck working on these things. They get fixated on the perfect brand and the perfect colors and the purple, or well, purple, the perfect this and perfect way of saying things and perfect bio. But it's a process of evolution. It's iteration, right? It's not something that you do one day and you throw a couple of hours at and you're set for the next year. If you followed Danco for any length of time, you've seen that he's literally changed his bio like 84 times in the past 12 months. But my point is that it's a process of iteration, but don't let that stop you from creating content. Because if you have the perfect brand, but you're not putting anything out into the world and you're not engaging with other people on your chosen platforms, then having the perfect brand doesn't do you any good. So all I'm saying is, yes, definitely work on this stuff, but as Dan has had to remind me numerous times, don't get stuck on that and let that stop you from putting things out. It's okay if your brand doesn't feel complete yet. What matters is that you're still putting things out there while you're iterating and improving on it.
100%. And that's the thing, really, is you kind of just have to, with all of this stuff, one good thing to do is like, think, would I follow this person? Right? If let's say I write my bio, I think it looks good, but then seriously think like, would I follow a person that had this bio? Does it make me feel any type of way? Um, and then same thing with content. Like, would I engage with this tweet? Would I retweet this tweet? And you're not going to nail that every single time, by no means, but it's just something good to think about and gauge. But I had one last thing. Oh, okay. So as with like pulling from various sources to become like a conglomeration of just a bunch of different people, like 10 different people, or your tribe of mentors in digital economics, the thing with like a bio, or even like you're like writing a headline for your sales page or writing a tweet, you're always going to do it better with inspiration. And I know a lot of copywriters recommend this. I know whatever it may be, this is kind of their process for writing something new. So for a bio, I would study, like immerse yourself, just click on different profiles, click on like 20 different profiles, just read their bio, screenshot the ones you like. Maybe you'll end up with like 5 or 6, and then piece together, like brainstorm 5 of your own. And then you stop, you go on a walk, and then you let your mind kind of do its thing and decide which one's the best, or did you come up with another one? And that's what a lot of like famous copywriters do for headlines. They get inspiration, they brainstorm like 10 to 20 headlines, and then they go on a walk. They just do nothing. Tarantino does this. He like, or used to do this. He'll write and he'll go sit by the pool, and then more ideas will come to him because he doesn't have that external focus cognition on like work. It's more internal default mode network type deal, which Joey introduced me to. And I just love the differences between like the task positive and the default mode network. But that's a topic for another time. So we will get into questions. I don't see any in the chat, and this doesn't have to be limited to like brand only. It could be really anything you're doing or struggling with at this moment, or if you just have a question at all. So I feel like the only way to go ahead.
I have a question. Kind of hypothetical, but it may help some people. I'm curious to hear your perspective. Say someone's doing this, how much of the process should be taking what works that successful people are doing, and how much of it should be what resonates with you on a personal level?
That's a good distinction. I think it would be both, right? Because mostly like the thing that works for other people, and this is in terms of bio, like as you said, I feel like I put too much emphasis on my bio. It's people only see it one time, okay, more than that, but they see it, they decide to follow or not, and that's usually not because of the bio. It's because the piece of content was so good that they clicked, they saw, they're like, oh yeah, I'm kind of interested in this, and then I follow. So over the lifetime like of your Twitter brand, your bio isn't doing too much aside from like telling people what you do and possibly leading them somewhere. Because it's like, how many times do you go to someone's profile? If you really like the person, maybe you'll go to it like 10 times in the lifetime you follow them, but other people, it's like 1-2 times they'll see your bio. It's not the most important thing in the world. Your content is 10 times more important, but of course, bio is a part of the brand. It helps get the point across. It helps kind of display who you are. So it is important in that aspect. But as a whole, in terms of finding the balance between like what works and what resonates with you, that's the entire fun of it. I don't have a formula for it, but it's mostly know what works, and then how can you kind of manipulate what resonates with you to fit that structure. Because that's what I've found is usually like the thing that makes most content or bios or whatever do well, it's the templates, it's the structures. And then once you understand those well enough to kind of create one of your own, then you start doing that, and that's when you see a lot of growth. So as a whole, like, use the structure as training wheels to get something out there and good enough until you have the experience and have the idea to make it better, whether that be for content or bio or whatever you're writing or just putting out there. Cool. All right, Oscar, what's up?
Hey Dan, how's it going? How's it going, Joey?
Yo.
I have a question right now. It has nothing to do with this. It's a little bit more on the master side. So speaking of lead magnets, and also speaking of, the guides that you offer through Twitter, when you say retweet and like this comment, or retweet and like this tweet, and I'll send you my guide for whatever. What's the difference between those two in terms of, should the lead magnet, in your landing page and the guide that you're offering through those kinds of tweets, should they be completely different? Can they be the exact same thing? Should they be different lengths? So I'm struggling with that right now, because I want to do one of those, but I'm not sure whether I need to do, two different documents on the same topic, or if they should be different topics, and even if they should be, same length, different lengths, etc.
Yeah, it can be the same thing. Like, unless you want to run a specific promotion for the auto DM thing, like, you could do it for your lead magnet, just like any of them, right? I could do it for my product too if I positioned it correctly. But one thing with the auto DM is that, like, I'd be careful with it, because it does get a good amount of traction. But I personally, from people that I've talked to and just people that I've seen, like, unless it's really good or it's very, like, super desirable, like the Make Money Online, like, I made 8 billion this month, I packaged it up into 6 steps, I'll send it to you for free, then you're better off with consistency and just plugging it under your tweet, because more people are catching on to those styles of promotions, and it could look bad on your brand as a whole. And I've talked with JK. It was kind of a funny moment where JK, he DM'd like a group I'm in with him, and he's like the auto DM feature got me like X amount of email subscribers. And then I'm like, oh, that's cool. And I like went and looked at my own, and just from plugging my newsletters and my lead magnets, I had like double that amount. So it's kind of interesting to think, like, do you want to be this noisy on the timeline, or do you want to just like quietly provide value and let the people go into it with like a marginal difference in results in most cases?
Yeah, I've seen those guys where they do once every week or even twice a week, because they have 2 different guides. And yeah, I definitely don't want to be that guy, but I was thinking, I don't know, maybe if I do it once a month, or something like that, then yeah, it's not like the the daily kind of thing. But yeah, I wanted to try that. And yeah, so I was just wondering about, so it could literally be the same lead magnet that I put on the landing page. It could just be that guide over there.
Yeah, so that's something. I like the 1 month approach, and it's just something to test, right? It's something fun to try out. So you could do that, or you could really do anything. Like, if you have a newsletter that you would want to turn into like a Loom video and walk people through certain steps, like one of your most valuable ideas or concepts that you go over, then that may seem more valuable, and you can test them all. That's the good thing with it, is that 1 month you can record a Loom video on this topic, the next month on this topic, and then whichever one performs better, it's like, oh, that would actually make sense to create a product out of, or like start talking about more, because it's getting more engagement. So as a whole, it doesn't necessarily matter what medium it's delivered in, as long as you're just true to the point. Here's what you're going to get, and then in the DMs, that's what they get.
Okay. And just a quick question also, have you guys heard anything, or do you guys have any sort of like wild idea of how things might change now that Elon is the big old lord of the town? Because I'm guessing some of the engagement stuff, will change, the algorithm will change or something, because he's been doing some polls, right? So I don't know if you guys have heard something or have any wild thoughts on that.
One
don't
thing
have-
I have heard is review is being turned off. Reviews being killed in the next month or two.
Review the email newsletter?
Yep.
Damn. Okay. Okay, yeah, that's a big one because that's the one that most of us have in our bio.
Yeah.
Okay.
Beehive. Beehive would be the next recommendation. It's very
Okay.
similar, if not better in some cases.
Okay.
But I don't have any crazy speculations. I think engagement for us, like the people that aren't mega political, will increase slightly across the board. He's going to implement some interesting features with like the long form, like threads might be killed because he's doing that thing where you're able to attach long text. So I feel like it'll become more of like a forum or LinkedIn-esque where you have the tweet and then like you can read the description, but threads may still be a thing. So I don't know. I feel like all around no major changes will be made. Like it's social media. And so content, good content, getting eyes on it, etc., is still going to remain the same. But there may be some new tactics or strategies that come up. And I know a lot of people like JK will be talking about it for sure. And they'll be the first to give out the strategies or even charge for it. I just pay attention to what they're doing just so you don't have to charge for it. That's the main thing.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Joey.
Yep. All right, Todd, what's up, man?
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
So my question is kind of really around brand focus. So what I'm kind of struggling with is, I've gone through the first module, the most profitable niche is you. So I've done that already. And going through that, doing tweets and stuff. And so one of the things that's in there is kind of, focusing and tweeting about what you're learning. But one of the things I've been struggling with, which I'm trying to learn now, is kind of the audience building, marketing, copywriting aspect. But that's not what I want my brand to be. I don't want to be the next copywriting Twitter person, right? So I'm spending a lot of time learning about that stuff, but the stuff that I want to pull my content about is from different places, and I'm still trying to figure out what the brand is of that. And it's like, so, how do I still keep brand and keep learning on and posting on things that are not the main thing that I'm learning about? Because again, I don't want to end up being another copywriting Twitter person, because I know obviously those are the easiest ones to follow because there's great examples. And I'm also finding in my niche that, looking for people to follow that are in it, it's kind of early days. And I found some, but it's there's not a lot of them out there. There's a lot in the niche area because there's like a lot of authors, a lot of people with clout, but they're not necessarily making their clout on, let's say, Twitter.
What's your niche?
So my background is agile software development. So coaching, leadership in mostly B2B context. I'm trying to get out of that, not entirely out of it, but take it to a more B2C level, like helping individuals with the concepts and things that we've learned in there. And I also have a background in improvisational theater and how that applies to organizations and interpersonal relationships and things like that. So one of the other things I'm trying to figure out is I'm not sure where all that fits in with things like, the money, relationships, health thing. It does, but it kind of touches on all three, right? You want to better your career or improve your business to make more money, but you want better relationships with people in your business, which is going to improve your mental health, but it's not necessarily one of those focus areas, right?
Yeah. I don't see that as a bad thing. Like, I think it's good that you just see the connection within those things, because that's kind of like how you want to position the content in most cases, is towards people's desires. And like those desires are in those verticals: health, wealth, relationships, and happiness. But then it's like, okay, what is your way of getting those desires? And it is through like the agile development and the things revolving around that. So if it helps, I'm not too familiar with that space. So it's like, from the broad perspective first, like, I wouldn't worry about talking about marketing, copywriting. I like, since you don't want to, just take it out of your mind. Like, don't worry about that at all. Learn about it, of course. So you
yeah, I mean, that's a big area of focus of learning, because that's the area I've struggled with, right? Is building that audience outside of, B2B referrals, which is where I get most of my work. And of course, trying to go to build an audience. So I need to learn those things. And I spend a lot of time learning those things now. But it's like, but that's not what I want to talk about though.
Yeah. So like, what would be a broader, more relevant way of like framing the agile development or those other things? Whereas like, is it personal leadership? Is it like, how can it help the individual? And like, what would you categorize those as?
Yeah. So what I'm kind of figuring out, there's a lot of similar things that have been going on in other spaces, which is kind of why I take this element. And that probably the best example of someone who has something similar is Jocko Willink, right? So
Mm.
he took Navy SEALs, and if you read his book Extreme Ownership, a lot of the stuff he talks about is the same stuff we do in Agile. It's the same big concepts, but he takes it from Navy SEALs and brings it to a general audience, right? And so I want to take a lot of those similar things from the Agile space, bring it to a general audience. And so obviously Jocko is a great follow, but his Twitter is basically his watch, and
Yeah.
that's not really the one I want to steal the audience off of. His YouTube is great, but that's different, right? And so there are a handful of people, and there's people in the leadership space like David Marquet, who's former Navy submarine captain, Patrick Lencioni, but again, these guys aren't Twitter guys.
Yeah.
And so there are some, again, which I found, but it's a much smaller niche on Twitter compared to the copywriting guys.
Yeah. Okay. So in that case, in terms of content, one of my favorite things to do, I like reading tweets for like inspiration and like the structure of them. But most of my content and ideas, it's from the longer form stuff. It's from YouTube videos, from Medium, from books. So how I would see it is you're going to be the guy that takes the Jocko Willink message kind of and brings that to Twitter and like talks about it in that way. But then since you would like tie it to Jocko Willink, who follows Jocko Willink? Where you can look at his following list, you can either see bigger accounts or just people you can engage with. Most of self-improvement Twitter would fall under that. And then you can be, I see it as a good thing where you can be this agile Jocko Willink, you know what I mean? Where like that's what's going to differentiate you in the self-improvement space or the self-development space as a whole. So those are the main people that I would engage with and interact with and make friends with. And then kind of try to bring that new view to all of it, right? System Sunday could be a good inspiration for like how he does threads. Because as I said, I don't know much about agile development, but if you read his threads, I feel like there could be some similarities there. And you'd be able to pull a lot from him. So he's one guy to study in terms of threads, because his threads are just doing absolutely amazing. And he's growing like wildfire on all platforms just by copy pasting the threads. So that's someone I would recommend. But as a whole, I just mainly pay attention to the self-improvement and like the creator space and just engage with a bunch of different people, because like, even if you engage with the marketing and sales guys or the copywriting, marketing, sales, whatever, they'll like, those people can have your same interests, right? And they usually do, where the marketing, sales, copywriting, they want to build a business. Therefore, they are interested in some form of improvement and becoming more efficient in their workflow and all of this other stuff. So I wouldn't hesitate, is what I'm saying, to interact with, network with people that are in similar but different niches in the entire Twitter space, because that's how you're going to build the most leverage, is like pulling from a bunch of these different audiences and letting your beginner level content, lead magnets, and possibly even like flagship newsletters get them up to speed on what you're talking about, so you can kind of indoctrinate them into your message.
Okay. Yeah, and one other question just along those lines, because you mentioned newsletter. So obviously in the first module, we created the newsletter in Beehive, but haven't really done much with it. What's kind of your suggestion for the kind of chicken and the egg of kicking off the newsletter, because you have 0 subscribers and then you're going to write your newsletter to an audience of 0? How do you kind of launch that?
So the big thing with me is kind of treating those newsletters as both practice and lead magnets in themselves, because, and like, it's just good for idea generation. Like, you really don't see until like writing the 4th newsletter, it's hard to like see the true benefit in it if nobody's like receiving it directly in their inbox. But you can, like, I like to plug them under my tweets, where it's like, here, read this. This goes over the tweet. a lot more in depth, and then people read that, and then on Beehive, or in most cases, there's like an email opt-in at the top and the bottom of the blog, like the backlog newsletter itself. And so you're gaining newsletter subscribers that way, while also being able to like have a lot of depth behind your ideas and generate ideas for tweets that way. And then if you want to repurpose it for YouTube or other things, then you have that piece already there. Or when you decide to start YouTube or even podcast or whatever it may be, you come back and you have 10, 20, 30 scripts just ready to go, and you can start it off. So there's a lot more utility behind the newsletter than just sending it to the subscribers, but having the newsletter subscribers is incredibly powerful. So it's kind of like both. I would practice while you have 0 subscribers, so that when you're getting subscribers, they're getting higher quality newsletters, right? So you don't put out that first one that's going to be bad either way to a bunch of subscribers. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Okay, and you don't set any of those old ones up to be like, what is like a sequence when new people sign up? You just have them sign up and pick up wherever.
Oh, I've done that. I would recommend that. So,
Okay.
we go over sequences and masters as well, but that's the main thing is once you have X amount written, then you can turn them into whatever. They can go into sequences. They can go into, like, if you want to just start writing weekly newsletters and space every single one a week apart for like a year, and then have people continuously join that newsletter and run through that evergreen, then you could stack up like 3 years of newsletters and then just piece off the face of the earth and let people run through that over time. So there's a lot of versatility.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much.
No problem. All right. Danson, what's up, dude?
Hey, Dan. Glad to be here. So my question kind of follows off the back of Todd. Like, he was very much like, he doesn't want to be the next telling people how to create content kind of deal. And my mindset coaching is kind of what I'm going for. It's kind of counterintuitive to the idea of Twitter. And it's, just like it's like an Eckhart Tolle, like, don't worry about the validation of things, just be present, be accepting of yourself, whatever. How do I bring people up to speed to that so that they're like, I need that, it's like one of those higher Maslow's hierarchy of needs kind of things that people they want to focus on the money, it's how I see Twitter anyways, a lot of, and I'm just kind of confused I'm posting content all the time and some people are resonating with it. They're like, yeah, I love that. But how do I say, hey, by the way, you need this 10% more that I'm willing to offer?
Can you give me an example? Like what, like, are you struggling with this in terms of content or in terms of like creating your offer, or like what's the main struggle point in like putting this into practice?
I think it's just like leading people to wanting to even pick up that offer, because people are just like kind of chasing after what they want. And if they're like, I'm happy, and then they have that, well, I hit a low point and, well, I'm feeling better now, thanks anyways. And it's like, well, let's avoid dropping down into that place again, or stumbling down into your actual rock bottom. And through like tackling on what is causing the problem that they're kind of unaware of to begin with. So it's kind of like, I'll be happy when I make more money, but you're actually not happy with how your mundane tasks are going throughout life. Kind of like enjoying the process instead of enjoying the journey kind of thing. So I guess what I'm asking is, how do I make content that gets someone interested in that thing? It's kind of like a lead gen, I guess.
Yeah. So the thing with that, I would try doing exactly what you did there, where you're kind of going through your thought process and their thought process, and then don't attack it but provide an argument for why yours is better. Like
Mhm.
if they're so focused on the money, then create content on why they shouldn't be, and try to create an argument that just like makes it click for them, where they're like, oh, I should be focused on this instead. And then you could even tie it all together with like, this is going to help you make more money in the long run anyways. So
Right.
you
Right.
know what I mean?
Absolutely. That's
So
kind of
it's
my thought process.
so that's their thing, is you walk through your own thought process and then you walk through their thought process. I do this on walks all the time, is like, and it's unconscious a lot of the time, where like I'll have arguments with people in my head. Like I'll think of something that they said, or that like something pops into my head, and then it's like, oh, but what about this? And then, oh, what about this? And so then it's like you just you kind of have an argument, but then when you post it on Twitter, you do it in a more cordial way, and you try to polish it up that much more to just kind of prove your point. That's all it really is like you're trying to persuade people to adopt your worldview, and kind of make them understand why their worldview may be false, or it may not be optimal towards the goal that they're trying to achieve.
Okay.
And I have a insight that I don't know if the experience that you've had, but I'm happy to share, and you can chime in.
Sure.
So a lot of times with like that type of, because I've worked with a lot of people, it's very similar. And a lot of times with that type of content where it's like, there's the idea of meeting them where they're at, and then opening the door and allowing them to shift beliefs, right? So one of the easiest ways is, or two ways that I found really well, stories and metaphors, because people don't feel like they're being attacked. And they just come to their own conclusion with it, right? So it's the whole concept of like inception. So you're putting this idea, and then they come to the conclusion themselves, and it's all of a sudden a good idea. So stories and metaphors work really well. And then just using language of like verbiage around considering, like, have you considered this, consider that, imagine this, imagine that. Those things tend to open the doors really well for people like that. Especially with like trying to get them to see what the thing they're focused on might not be the thing that they actually need. So I don't know if you found similar stuff, but I just wanted to add that.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. Because that's kind of the whole, both of those recommendations. It's like making that argument, stories, metaphors, all that stuff. Like I'm trying to help people get to the root of the problem, but it's like they're attacking the leaves on the tree, and you're not actually. So that makes sense of how you just got to raise that awareness through those examples so people can relate. Okay.
So some places might find good ways of doing it. So my experience was in health and fitness. I coached in a long time for that. And then I worked with guys in that arena for a really long time. It's the same type of thing. A lot of the people, they educate on the root cause of the problem, but they're not necessarily the things that the consumers are looking to in the front end, right? They might want that small win. And then it's like, and then they're actually getting the deeper depth into it. So you might find some ways of educating your audience on that just from like some health and fitness folks who are doing a little bit more on like deeper educating instead of just like six-pack shredded stuff. So you might find stuff from creators on there that could help.
Okay. Thanks,
I
guys.
had heard something, I don't know if it was said right now, but I had heard something before that goes, sell them on what they want, but teach them what they need. So I think that's something that Joey just kind of like what he was saying, right? Because in the end, I think that we need to, sell people on what they think they want at the moment. And then once you do that, I mean, of course, you're going to deliver that, but you also deliver, the other stuff that makes you different from all the other people. And then you can, do what you were saying earlier. Instead of focusing on this, I would say focus on that. And then you teach them that as well.
Yeah, that actually is a good point. People often buy emotionally, and then they rationalize something logically. And something like, as a productivity consultant, performance consultant, I haven't been doing as much of that lately, but there have been times where it was kind of hard for me to sell that, because people don't necessarily want to be more productive. People don't necessarily want to sleep better. What they want is the benefits they can get from that. And it took me a long time to learn that lesson. So if you look at like, okay, what are the higher level benefits that you or your customers would get from being more productive? Well, they would have more free time to spend with their family or friends or hobbies. They would make more money. They would feel more satisfied. That's not a great example, but think about kind of like what was just said, like think about what they want and then help educate them on why they need your solution to their problems. Because they may not even be aware. That's another thing, is like for performance and fitness and productivity, a lot of people aren't even really aware of why some of the reasons they're not where they want to be. Like a lot of people don't know that you actually should drink water. You shouldn't multitask. You shouldn't use your phone all day long. You shouldn't you should sleep more, things like that. They just don't understand that these actually are things that they need to be doing. So if you can help educate them on, hey, if you start doing these things, you'll get X result that you want.
Okay, this is all super great advice. I really appreciate it. I just had this talk with someone about benefits over features, and so that's why I'm asking these questions, because most of my content comes off as features, because curse of knowledge, I'm like, this feels great. I feel great the way my mindset is and yada. But how do I relay that to someone so they understand that they can feel that? And so trying to focus on the benefits, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Plus,
like
one thing
this is an oversimplified example, but say if you're selling a fitness program, you shouldn't focus entirely on like, hey, here's the program and here's like, we'll do these calls and selling the transformation that they want, and you're selling the benefits that they're going to get. So more energy, being able to play with their kids, live longer, whatever.
A great metaphor that I saw years ago from an old copywriter from the 1930s used was that of a river, and there's a bunch of people in a boat in the river sailing by, and you're on the dock. How do you get people to come over to the dock? You have to say something that's going to capture their interest, and that would be the higher level benefits. But then you've got to get them to the factory from the dock, and you have to build a logical chain that takes them step by step to where you're at. One of those is there's these desires they have that bring them to the dock. And one of the things to reveal is, well, why don't they, if they've already been trying stuff in their life to get that, why hasn't it worked? And then that's where some of your deeper features come into play that answer that. Like, you know, you've been trying to get happiness or whatever. And then they come over and, here's how to get better happiness. They come over to the dock. And then you go, here's some things you've been trying to do to get happiness. Then you go, here's the problem with those or why they're not working. And then you go, here's the real seed or kernel or idea or feature that actually unleashes it. And based on that, here's a new solution or path forward to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I was just thinking, as you guys were talking about calling out people's behaviors, essentially, that's your problem. But so that's kind of like hooking, like, oh, I scroll on my phone for 2 hours a day. What's wrong with that? And it's like, oh, well, you're ruining your mind or whatever. And so guiding them through that, and then once they're hooked and reading, they're all of a sudden in that thinking mindset. Okay, so this is what I actually need.
So another way to think isn't even the benefit of the benefit. Let's flip that. Let's take phone scrolling. They might think that's not even a problem to them. I love scrolling on my phone 2 hours a day. So you've got to go, well, what problems is that actually creating in their life that they will feel, what they call the felt need? And like, to my teenage daughter, scrolling on her phone 4 hours a day isn't a problem. So I've got to find a deeper problem that's causing that she would recognize. So think through, like, I use the metaphor of dropping a pebble into a pond and you watch the ripples go out, and it works for either a problem or a benefit. If I drop a problem into the pond, what greater problems does that cause in somebody's life? And in this case, like, I'm just randomly using phone scrolling, because there's a whole lot of people they don't see that as a problem. They see it as a cure for boredom. But so then you have to go, okay, they're doing this. What's the next ripple out that's creating in their life? You know, they're wasting time, they're wasting they're losing happy, whatever it is they're losing, and then go out another ripple. Well, what damage is that causing in their life? And you get to what you call the felt needs or pains.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's where you start talking with them, and then you walk them back through the ripples to the core pebble in the pond, the phone scrolling. And then from that, you walk them back out, almost like a funnel. You walk them back out the other ripples to the benefits, right? That if that would have altered, look, this would change, this would change. You got the entire universe's knowledge in your hand in a phone right now. And we're on Instagram flipping through it. And, 4 hours a day, you could be best in the world at anything. And instead, that's all of that life capacity has been lost. I'm just riffing here, but think of the problem, and get to where they have a felt need. In addition to the benefit of the benefit of the benefit, where you stand on the dock and call them over.
Yep.
Different ends of the stick.
Yep. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
And Base, did you have one more thing? I know you messaged me.
Yeah, it was almost the same thing, but basically like into practice how I did it, because I had like a recent client in a similar space. And basically what happened was like he DM'd me, he needed something in what like I offer. And the main thing which I did was like as soon as I'm with a call on with like we are on a call, and the main thing which I do is like instead of being like telling him what he needs, asking him questions to make him realize that whatever he's doing right now isn't working for him, right? So like what I do is like I say like my main thing is like I take them out of failure by breaking their mental roadblocks, right? So I tell them like, okay, you are doing the same thing over and over again, the same method you are typically following in your life, and it's not working. You are being told to follow the same method until it works, but what you really need is to create a method that works for you. And that's what I sell them on, which is like, you have been following the same thing for so many times. Now this is like, I will help you create your own method. So that's my proposition. So the main thing is just that help them come to the conclusion on their own that whatever they are doing is not working for them. And the second thing part is like, as soon as you have that first client, as soon as you help them, use that, the everything you helped him solve, use that as content for your future, like for ideas for your future content, because then you know that what this type of clients really are looking out for, instead of just writing everything that you want to write about. Like at least have a few things around those things that you help them solve.
Nice. I like that.
That's very good.
Okay. Nice. All right, Kieran, what's up, dude?
Hey, what's going on, Dan? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. So yeah, I run an online business currently. I sell a digital product in the B2B space. So I write content about topics that I think will appeal to that audience, for around sales, marketing, offers, etc. However, the mission I'm on is about creating a 100K a month online business with my digital product. So the problems that I'm trying to solve for my business are not necessarily the same problems that I'm trying to solve for my target audience through my content. For example, problems I'm trying to solve, which I worked through in your Notion template, are around building a Twitter audience, a YouTube audience, achieving a sustainable income online. So my question is, how do I think about branding and content creation, considering this? Because I know in the program you mentioned that you're documenting your life, your thought processes, experiences online, to essentially attract somebody who's let's say, who you're one step ahead of essentially. So yeah, so that's just something I'm having a challenge with.
Yeah, see, that's the interesting balance, because some of the problems can end up that way where they just don't align, at least with like what your current plans are. So my suggestion is kind of try to find that balance, because I've noticed there's people on Twitter or other places where like they're just so focused on the other person, or like the specific target audience that they're trying to sell to, that they don't grow. Like, I know there's a lot of nuance to that and that can be overcome, but I just see it way too much. Like Alex Hormozy, for example, he didn't build his personal brand around Gym Launch or the thing that made him the most money via Facebook ads and some other things. He built his audience with a bit more, he kind of spun that information, literally the same information, towards a more general audience so that they know what they're talking about. So that's something you could try to incorporate to attract more people and sustain growth and build a network of people that could get you in contact with your main target audience, while also attracting that target audience by just broadening what you talk about a tad more, so it has that higher potential engagement. Because with that stuff, there's like viral, which is usually super basic stuff that doesn't resort in a lot of followers. And then there's super niche, where he's not in here, but in the Discord in Modern Mastery, I know someone who he's just getting started, but he's wanting to do it with real estate, and he's and for home buying in real estate. And so he's writing tweets relating to like home buying. And that isn't to me, I'm not like in the space myself, so this only means so much, but he's talking about things from the lens of like two people that are looking to buy a home, which is a very small percentage. So he limits how much he can grow there. And he would have to grow his brand a tad more and broaden what he talks about. Therefore, he can attract more people, and with time have the people in his audience that would be willing to buy a home, and build a name for himself around that, so that other people can refer people to him, or when they're ready to buy a home, they know exactly who they're going to because they follow someone who is an expert in that, even when that's not all that he talks about. Right. So with that stuff, you don't have to talk. You can talk about like growing a Twitter audience. You can post like thank yous when you hit certain milestones on Twitter, and or the other problems that you're trying to accomplish. Like, I wouldn't hesitate to post about those and just gauge and see how they do. But aside from that, you can, the thing that I would recommend is like pull from your current digital product, the lessons from that, the main teachings from that, and then use those as content. But if they're too niche and you don't see them attracting a good amount of people, like if you don't think they could get a baseline threshold of engagement that would result in your growth, then I would broaden it a bit. So the point still remains, but it's just applicable to more people. So, man, I wish I could find this.
Yeah, that's one of the problems I'm having. See, I'm talking specifically to, business owners, not just business owners, but business owners who run IT services businesses. So it's hyper niche. It's not just business owners, it's people who run technology businesses, and specifically those who are like kind of startups and early stage. So you're saying instead of that, maybe target more kind of broader general business stuff that I'm struggling with also, or?
Yeah, so with that, since that's like very specific, what I'd personally recommend is, I lost my train of thought mid-sentence, but what I would personally recommend is like use that as authority. Like that's what you're building, right? And you can pass down some insights on that, but people will gradually pick up like, okay, this is what he helps people with. And then you can use your personal brand to grow. So you have a network, because like it's something intangible, but it's so powerful. Like JK Molina can get in any founder's inbox, even when he wasn't talking specifically about Tweet Hunter or growing their businesses, right? So you talking about the things that we're doing in digital economics and maybe treating it as like a fun hobby project to potentially like just talk about the things you want to talk about while dishing out the marketing insights or whatever else it may be from your digital product, but in a more broad lens. So if you're talking about marketing for IT people, talk about like why marketing is important, or talk about XYZ marketing principles so you can grow a broader audience. And then you kind of get to pick and choose who you get to work with. And eventually you could pivot your offer to be more towards the people that you've attracted in the audience. And also just having that following, when you reach out to someone, they're 10 times more likely to respond to you, 10 times more likely to work from you, especially because they already know that you know what you're talking about by posting an audience. They're going to trust you 10 times more from someone that just sent them a random cold email and is like, hey, I can do this for you, XYZ. And then they go and look at their social media profiles or their website and there's nothing there. But if you DM someone and they're like, oh, this guy has even 5,000 followers, they're 10 times more likely to hire you or buy from you or even just follow you.
Gotcha.
So it's kind of, it's a difficult balance there.
No, it makes sense. I appreciate the insights.
Hey, Dan, can I add an insight, a kind of light bulb that just went off for me from that?
Yes.
So you mentioned a great example in Alex Hormozi that really got me thinking, because he was a guy who was just running gym businesses. He was a gym guy, right? But in order to do that and succeed at that, when you hear his story, he really had to learn about marketing and sales. And so now he goes out and he teaches about marketing and sales, but everybody knows he has this gym business. So, you know, it markets his gym business indirectly because he went to a brighter audience based on he learned this thing in order to succeed in his business. So, you know, thinking in the current example there is like you've got a niche business, but in order to succeed in that niche business, you had to learn something that your clients have to learn that's probably broader. You start talking about that, you'll attract a broader audience, some of which will be those niche people who will say, you know, just like Alex Hormozi, I'm sure he gets guys who watch his sales and marketing who say, hey, I'm going to sign up for Gym Launch.
Yep.
So,
oh, JK did.
Yeah, there you go.
So there's a prime example. Yeah. We were actually thinking about launching a gym and he like bought the book. He went through all of it and we didn't do it, but it was fun.
Cool. Just thought I'd drop that in.
That's good. That's great, Todd. Because I had to learn a lot of things that I tried to teach the people I'm serving and selling my product to as well, such as sales, marketing, offer creation, branding. So that's great. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's the second thing there too, is like you have skills that you can piece together for anyone. Like if I guarantee you could probably pivot your current offer to fit a more general, not necessarily general, but in a more of an audience that you're attracting like that. So that's something I wouldn't worry about, because as you grow, you'll get the inspiration where it's like, oh, I know exactly what to create to monetize this audience faster, but that doesn't mean that you're taking away from the monetization of the other offer just by doing that, right? So whenever if that decision comes up, you're in a very good spot where you can probably execute on that very quickly.
Gotcha. And a bit of a quick win, actually. I reposted a tweet from your work going through the program onto my Facebook page, and it was the most engaged post I've ever had. So something's paying off.
Yeah, hell yeah, that's awesome. Can you send that in the Discord? I want to see it. I haven't been on Facebook in a while.
Yeah, I will. The first comment was just one guy saying nailed it and like 3 exclamation marks. So I'll share that in the Discord. Yeah.
Nice. Hell yeah. All right. Moving along. Alan, what's going on?
What is going on? I hope all is well. So just got a quick question for you, Dan. So I am in the martial arts space. I mostly do like Muay Thai, fitness, mostly conditioning, right? And that's where I want to kind of focus my branding around. The thing is, though, is that I'm also interested in kind of like the mental side of things, like mental health, and also I'm thinking like similar to how Dan Go positions his branding, right? That I also want to be able to reach out and help people in terms of like I mentioned, mental health and just fitness and getting in shape and so on. So the conundrum that I'm in right now is kind of how am I going to kind of set my brand up to kind of accommodate two things. One is where I'm trying to help martial artists, right, in terms of like competition, because I've gone through the whole stage of competition and training, and I feel like there's a lot I can share, and that there's a lot of messages, because like when I'm trying to train for a fight, I'm always trying to research different topics and trying to understand, okay, what's the best diet, what's the best technique for like Muay Thai or boxing or whatever. And so I have a lot of knowledge I can pass on to people on that space. But on the other space, there's not really a lot of people that's, in competition or in training, and they're not exactly going to be too interested in how to like do a real kick, and whatever. And they're more interested in how do I just lose weight? How do I lose 10 pounds, right? Like I got a wedding next month and I'm just trying to get in shape. And there's a lot of knowledge I can pass on to that. So my question is, do I try to kind of have two separate brands, two separate accounts that I can kind of accommodate for both things, or should I just only focus on just one side what interests me the most? Because on the one side, like let's say in terms of like just general fitness and helping people lose weight and the mental health side of things, that's more of a larger audience, where the people who's focusing on competition and whatnot, and just martial arts and techniques, those are kind of a smaller audience, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So what I would do is take the Dan Go approach on like Twitter, right? Where he's writing, like, the type of tweets he writes that get a lot of engagement and lead to a lot of growth. And then in Threads as well, you can do that, but occasionally mix in some of the more advanced stuff. It's 100% going to get less engagement, but it's going to make up in perceived authority, because some people won't understand it, but the people that do and they get value from it, they're going to be the ones that hire you, right? It's like, as JK says, like St. Cash, where, yeah, the high engagement ones, tweets, are going to get a lot of traction. They're going to lead to a lot of growth, but then what's next? Where are you raising people to? And so I would have, let's say 70% of the content and tweets and threads, mostly like the stuff that's going to help you grow, especially at the start. And then let's say 20% is more like medium, like intermediate, like what's next? Like what are some techniques that people that have already started in this fitness journey or martial arts journey start doing? And then the 10% of the content is going to be like little hints at the advanced techniques. And then what you can do, so with the advanced stuff, I would mostly save that for coaching, where you're helping, because that's where it's going to be the most effective, and that's where the most dedicated people are going to be. So getting people competition ready. But in terms of like a lead magnet or an email or even a low ticket product, that could be like break into martial arts. So get into martial arts at home. Here's why it's important. Like, even if you just want to lose weight, here's what you can start doing. Here's some like boxing drills, like as an example, like boxing drills when you go to the gym or something like that, and get people to the point of like educate people to the point of potentially becoming your client to help with the advanced martial arts and like competition techniques. So on Twitter, it's going to be like 70% basic, 20% intermediate, 10% advanced. And then in a lead magnet and newsletters leading up to a product, that's all education relating to like martial arts, fitness, kind of what you do, like even nutrition in some cases, that will get them up to speed over time to the point of hiring you for direct one-on-one coaching with that stuff.
I see. Okay. Yeah, that's some awesome stuff, man. And so in regards to the products for like the 70% for like the basic. So it's a generally good idea. I know you have to kind of spread a lot of value, give a lot of value to to people and through Twitter, and so giving a lot of free things as well. And so should I also focus in terms of making products for the like a lot of products for like the basics, and then also eventually with the huge idea of doing the coaching for the advanced?
Yes. So you don't have to do like a ton of products. Well, it kind of depends, because like Ajax, Alexander Juan Antonio Cortez, if you know him, long name, but he has like 50 products. That's like all he does, right? Because I believe his whole thing is he has like not 50 products. He has like 10 products where it's like, here's a shoulder program, here's like a running program, here's a full body program, whatever it may be. So he has like, but they're low ticket. So he has like variables, or he has variation for what he can actually promote on the timeline, but all of those lead into his coaching. And so with him, I would research him. It's just, you could probably just type in AJAC if you don't already follow him, and look at his Gumroad. But overall, that's the main thing. You could definitely go like beginner martial arts, beginner training, beginner nutrition, and then all of those kind of lead into, or have an ending where it's like, here, book a call with me and we can talk about this more advanced stuff. And you don't necessarily have to limit yourself to the martial arts thing, because I know from experience, and that I know you'll have a thought for what it's going to be right now, and then you're going to get people into it. You're going to come up with problems, and then you're eventually going to pivot, and then you're going to end up in like slightly a different spot where you think you were going to get where you think you were going to end up. So that's just something to keep in mind, is like, now is the time to really test and try everything, and just practice like sales, marketing, creating arguments for a specific offer that you're going to sell, creating the good content, see what works, see what gets the most engagement, double down on that stuff. And then eventually you'll be able to create like this perfect, not necessarily perfect, but really good product or service for the audience that you've built. And that's where like the money really starts kicking into place. But that doesn't take away from you being able to monetize right now with your service or a potential product.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Can I just say something there?
Yeah.
There's a guy called Phil Daru, and that guy, he trains MMA fighters. So I know it's not exactly the same, but I think it's quite there because it is competition. And even though all of what he talks about and all of what he shows is him training either an MMA fighter, a professional boxer, or I'm looking right now his Twitter, he also trains Timbaland, the rapper. He also has, like those body weight fat loss programs for like regular people. So he does have like that mixture of programs for people that are, combat professionals that are doing some kind of competition, but he also has like those kinds of programs for just like the everyday person that wants to, rehab, or wants to lose weight, or wants to build some more muscle. So you could also look into what he does.
Yeah, 100%, man. Phil Daru is great, man. He's a beast when it comes to content and strength and conditioning. So 100%.
Yeah, man. Also just want to say that.
Cool. All right, Dan. Thank you for your patience. What's going on?
Yo, thanks for the recognition, brother.
Got you.
Appreciate it. And I'm driving along there. Just come back from some teaching work, thinking, yeah, I really need to quit my job. I really need to quit my fucking job. Anyway, two things. One, a tool called birdie.so was really useful to me in getting that profile set up. So anyone here who hasn't come across birdie.so, is a tool for A/B testing changes that you make to your profile. And the way that I used it was, rather than doing like a whole profile and then a whole other profile, I just changed one element at a time and let my small audience vote on what they liked best, and then just slowly implemented. We were talking about just tiny steps earlier on. Number 2 is a question. Dan, do you have any sense of what kind of profile conversion rate I should be expecting?
Oh man, I should probably be tracking my Twitter analytics more. I don't have a percentage because it's
Okay.
there's so many different variables where some people may not follow you just because you don't have X amount of followers, where like they see Sahil Bloom's profile, they're like, oh, 700,000. Yeah, of course, no brainer. They don't even read about his stuff.
Yeah.
So it like little things like that can throw it off.
Yeah.
But as long
Maybe
as
it's not even worth thinking about.
it's not, I don't check
Cool.
it.
Well,
Gotcha.
it's really not worth thinking about because a guy that I trust a lot is very knowledgeable about the algorithm and Twitter functioning and stuff like that. Save Your Sons, if you know him.
Yeah.
He told me, I was asking him about that question specifically, and he told me that he's had a massive spike and I've seen this too, a massive spike in impressions or profile views, but not a linear increase in new followers. So his conversion rate plummeted, and mine did too. I was wondering why my conversion rate went from like, I have a spreadsheet somewhere, but it's like 4% down to like 0.5%. So people are getting a
Sure.
lot more profile views, but that's not converting to followers, and it's messing up that data. And his theory on why that is, it has to do with like Google, like little web crawlers, so that like organize stuff or categorize things. This theory is that it's that's like counting as a profile view, but obviously you're not getting a follower from that. So the data is just useless right now.
Right. It's in the bin then.
It's in the bin.
It's in the bin.
Cool. So yeah, profile conversions don't count.
We don't give a fuck.
Exactly. All right, was that it from you, man?
That's it, brother. Thank you so much.
Cool, no problem. All right, Jimmy, what's going on?
Yo. This should be quick. I dropped my question in the chat. Pretty much I help people with pain, rehab. But I've just been talking about overall health just to grow. I was wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah. So talking about health is good just because it's broad and it will attract more people, and it's just so easy to get inspiration for that. Like you can go and tweet Hunter and you can be like, yeah, that post is like something similar to this is going to help me grow really fast. So in terms of pain, I would gauge it. Like I would test certain tweets or even ask a question, because questions have, but you have to make it broad and kind of like tricky, because a lot of people mess it up where it's like, I'm trying to learn if some people have pain and I can help them. What kind of pain do you have like in your body? When you could just say, do you have lower back pain? If so, why do you think it is? And then you can start gauging like what people see from there, or you can just test the content like super simple. Like if you have lower back pain, list of like advice to do, see how those start to do, and just keep it like as if you were writing the like regular health tweets, but for the pain stuff, and slowly work those in. Because at first, if there's a noticeable difference between that and your other content, it's not going to get as much engagement, but it will over time as more people gain interest in that thing. Because relating to just like talking about your other interests as a whole, I feel like a lot of people get turned off from it because they talk about this thing all the time. Then they try to introduce this thing. It gets like very low engagement, but it's because they're not aware. You haven't been doing that for a bit. It just takes time and like conditioning for your audience to get used to those things. So I'd tweet about the rehab and pain stuff as if like you're tweeting about fitness, nutrition, sleep, because a lot of people deal with it. But then that's the thing, is if you want that broader audience and you want them to get higher engagement, talk about the most common ones where it's like lower back pain, or even shoulder pain, or probably lower back pain to start, and then kind of branch off and test other things from there.
I did one last week on low back pain and got like 5,000 likes, and I got 3 clients off
Holy
of it.
shit.
So I'm wondering if I should be talking about that more, like all the time, or if I
Yeah.
should be talking about everything.
Well, test both, but definitely incorporate that into your rotation because that works. Like that's one of the things where it's like,
Yeah.
if it works, schedule it in the rotation where
Yeah.
if you could do that once a month, once every 2 weeks, and then consistently be getting clients from that, just milk it. Just keep milking
Yeah.
it because it just works.
Okay. So if you were to throw like a percentage on that, I know that's a tough question, but
Yeah.
between normal health, fitness stuff, and then more rehab, posture, pain.
I'd say 20% because it's still pretty relevant. It's not one of those things where it's like, oh, if you have like a broken neck, here's how I can help you. It's more so like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
pain, it's rehabilitation, it's what a lot of people need, whether they know it or not, right? Like I'm sure
100 million Americans have chronic pain.
there you go. That's a thread hook.
Yeah. Okay. 20%. Thank you, man.
Cool, got you. And congrats on the thread and
Oh,
class.
thanks.
Oh yeah. All right, Based. I have to call you Based. I don't know you by Kennedy.
Yeah. So with us, like before the question, just like that Dan said, the Buddy ISO actually works well. I tried with the bio you gave me, Dan, which was, I study human nature and all of that. And that shit got 50% conversion rate. I was like, holy fuck, what is this? And like that, look, 50% is insane, Like
Yeah.
everyone watching 50%, yeah. And with the question, basically, which shows I had, you mentioned that converting newsletters into podcast and YouTube videos. And like that's something I'm planning right now to start a YouTube channel or a podcast. YouTube would be probably something like whiteboard because I don't show my face.
Mhm.
And I was like thinking, if I reuse my content from the newsletter, how do I make it different in a way that, I want to give my viewers a reason to not just read the newsletter, but as well watch the podcast
Yeah.
while the content is literally the same.
Yeah, that's something I struggle. I'm sure if you listen to the podcast, I struggle with that. I haven't posted in like 3 weeks because I just don't want it to be the same as the YouTube. Even though that's a limiting belief. Like you see Derek More Plates, More Dates, where he just all of his YouTube videos, all of his podcasts are both on YouTube and the podcast, right? So that might be something I do, where it's just like put the videos on the podcast so people can listen to that rather than watch. So that's one benefit where it is different because people just have different preferences in consuming the actual content itself. But in terms of the YouTube, so what I do is I'll literally just pull up my phone, go to my website, go to the article that I want to create a video on, and then I'll like read through a bit and I'll try to just recite it. Like I'll try to just speak clearly to the camera. And if I get lost or I'm not making any sense, then yeah, I'll read a sentence and I'll read it to the camera or something like that. And that's tended to work really well. So in terms of the YouTube stuff, I wouldn't try to make it super different. But for the podcast, what has worked well for me is keeping it attached short and only focusing on one like big idea from the newsletter. So if I were to go to my site, then just go to like 11. So the 11 insights I wish I knew that just like the most recent YouTube video, I would go down and I'd go to like the first lesson. It's all traffic and offers. And then I would just riff on that on the podcast for like 10 minutes. Right. And then I could do number 2, you need 3 levers. So the podcast, when I was doing it consistently, was more so like pick a big idea and just riff on that, give examples and kind of flesh it out on the podcast. When the YouTube video, it's like, I know those do better when you are focused on like viewer retention and catching attention. So it should follow the typical like lead, body, conclusion to guide people through the video. And it just makes for a much better structured video that, especially for like a whiteboard style or like a graphic style. So that's the one thing I'd recommend. Does that help?
Yep, that helps a lot. I mean, just like on top of that, do you think like it's a good idea to have a whiteboard? I'm not sure if everyone knows what a whiteboard presentation is, but
Yeah, it's
basically,
good.
yeah.
There's accounts that do extremely well with that. So if you can pull it off, yeah, it's very good.
Mhm.
Another thing, you could just try B-roll. So I use story blocks, or my editor uses story blocks. Just so I don't have to log it's just a stock video website where you can type in like anything. Like I can type in social media and a video related to social media will come up, and then I can just use that and do a voiceover of that. So all the like transitions or like B-roll in between me speaking on my YouTube videos, like you could just do that for the whole thing, really, maybe with like text as well. So there's a bunch of different ways you could do it, but if you can master the whiteboard style, those do very good.
Yeah, because like I like whiteboard better because I've done it in the past as well. So I just thought maybe this might work. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Thanks.
that'll be cool. Cool. All right. Last one. Moritz, how are you doing?
Hi, Dan. Hi, Joey. Really appreciate this call. I wonder, how do you guys think about exiting a personal brand? Because if you stop producing content, then your income drops, right? Like in a job. And I fully understand people saying, why should you stop producing content if that's exactly what you love doing? And why should you stop providing value for the followers, right? But there's also some power in you only should start something having the end in mind. And in startup world, you always have a clear exit, failure, being purchased or IPO. And I just wonder how you would bridge that gap between a company brand you can sell and a personal brand. And what are examples and potential ways of exiting a personal brand without losing the asset you have built all over the years? Curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I've thought about this a bit because I'm very of the mind where it's like I could write one tweet a day and have a lot of fun with that, right? And that would keep me growing throughout my older years, like Scott Adams, regardless of what people think of him now. But the thing is I'm slowly learning that like my journey, as well as many others, it usually goes from like top of funnel social platforms, so like Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, to more long form stuff and more SEO heavy stuff. So whether it be blog articles where you can hire someone to optimize the SEO, or YouTube videos, which if you get it down and you're growing, like a lot of the people that are at 1-2 million subscribers, they post like one video a month, or they just post whenever because they're banking on all of the other views that are fueling their products. And it could be the same with like Google SEO, and even podcasts, and just getting your name out there. And especially getting on podcasts, where if you get on a podcast and that podcast continues to go on and on and on, like you get on the Joe Rogan podcast, you're kind of set because people are going to be researching your name and trying to find your content, whether you're putting effort into getting that content in front of people's eyes or not. So that's one way that you could continue selling your products while just decreasing your workload to practically zero. But what I'm planning on doing right now with Joey is we're trying to build a SaaS. So, but we're going to be able to launch that so much better than just like a startup without a traffic source would be able to do, right? We'll be able to get that. It's like Tweet Hunter. They plan on selling for X amount within a year, just because JK was so good at marketing with his personal brand and leveraging other people's audiences. So when you build the personal brand, you are usually building a network of 10 to 20 to even 40, 50 other people that have, just throwing a random number out there, 100,000 plus follower audiences across multiple social platforms. So if you at some point decide to launch another business that is relevant to what you talk about under your personal brand that you plan to sell in the future, you have so much traffic to send to that product once you launch it. And then if you plan to sell that down the road, then that's your exit, right? So personally, I don't see a way right now of people being able to like just sell a personal brand, or like me being able to sell down Dan Co. Maybe some people, or something will be able to happen in the future. But as of right now, I think the best option is to build at the start on like top of funnel social platforms where you can grow, funnel those people into YouTube, podcast, and then potentially hire someone or learn how to do SEO for yourself. So you're continuing to build traffic over time and have product sales over time, decrease your workload involved, possibly pick up another project pertaining to a business that you think would fit really well with the audience you have now, like turning one of your products into a SaaS and then going on to sell that software and cash out.
Cool. Thank you.
No problem. All right, Jonathan, what's up?
Hi, can you see me?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, basically, I'm new to all this. I'm just going to switch the gear a little bit. So I'm a bit overwhelmed after going through the first 2 parts of the curriculum. And I kind of have an idea of how to go about this, phase. But I thought, it'd be nice to have your chime as well.
Cool. So what was the part that you were overwhelmed with? Is it just like starting out?
Yeah, it's just there's a lot of moving parts, and it's like I get the overview, but when it comes to doing the actual implementation, I am doing it, but it just seems like I'm not sure if I'm actually implementing it in a way that makes sense to me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Did I describe it well enough? It's like I see all the moving parts and I'm doing as I'm going along the curriculum, but it just doesn't seem enough. And also it just seems like something's missing. And so, there's that gap, and I just don't know what that gap is.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you mind if I take a look at your profile?
Oh, yeah, sure.
All right. What is your username?
Let me just type it in. Oh, by the way, I was a Twitter version till like the other day. So.
Okay. All right. Do you care if I share?
No, sure.
Yeah, no judgment here. Okay. Share that. Pop it up. Cool. So first thing, banner's good. Profile picture is good. Name, good. Exploring and sharing ways to live a more satisfying and fulfilling life. Not bad. One thing that could be used here is just like a link or something else. I would start like the Beehive account and just show that you may potentially be writing newsletters in the future. But in terms of content, it's looking good. Like the practice is getting out there. But one thing that I would highly recommend is kind of following the, let's go. I know there's this in the curriculum itself where it's just so helpful to like look at tweet structures that previously did well and use those kind of as templates, because then you start to understand the like more of the moving pieces that actually lead to growth. So let's look at this one where it's like I have a soft hook, because most content or most things you have to catch attention, right? In some way. It doesn't have to be like a super, I don't know, you just have to put like conscious thought, like, would this catch my attention? Trust me when I say. And it's like, yeah, a little bit. Okay, we're good. And so trust me when I say list, whatever, tie it up. And then the last line is like something that makes it, it's the why. It's like, why should I care about all of this stuff? Like, what pains does it affect in my life? And so this takes practice, is like taking some of these, or you can just go to Tweet Hunter. And if you have Tweet Hunter, I know it's like a monthly charge, but this is just one example where I could type in this, and then you kind of just immerse yourself in the content that's doing well and that you know will lead to growth. And then you practice that, you get better with time, you try different structures. So whether it's the one-liners or even a bit longer of a paragraph, or like the list style, where it's like a comparison or something like this, then you just try out a bunch of them. Because the thing about the one-liners at the start, where it's like deep connection starts with consideration, it's like a good message, right? But at the very start, like, are people going to follow you for that? You know what I mean? Is
No.
like, is that something, right? Is that something that's going to like catch my attention if I've never seen your profile before, give me some kind of value, and then tie it up with like a pain or a benefit that I'm experiencing right now? And the best way to do this is like go through digital economics to understand like the fundamentals here. But then the best thing you can do is just like use these as training wheels to kind of plug your own ideas or topics into them and try to rewrite it. And it's going to be difficult. It's going to struggle until like you get in the habit of.
Oh yeah, it is difficult. I can tell you that now.
Like,
yeah, so basically I just didn't want to just kind of, consume the information and that's it. So I just wanted to push something out. That's the whole point of this, Twitter account. Because yeah, I know what happens when you start to just consume and just reflect, and that's all you do.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not an excuse. It's just trying to push myself to do that, because I tend to do it, with other things. So
I think that's the best way to do it, though.
Yeah, I think that's what you suggested as well. So I think the message I'm getting from you now is just to binge into a lot of tweets that I am relevant to, and then just when I start to get a gist, I'll obviously start to change the way I actually produce content, I guess.
Yeah. So it's more, so now it's like, now that you've started, it's more so like continuing with it, but supplementing it with the learning and kind of slowly implementing what you're learning. So if you learn like, okay, here's how I capture attention, then it's like, okay, start to practice that. And it's like, oh, okay, I need to deliver some form of steps. Then you practice that, or you come to write a thread and then you practice that. And after
so at
that,
the moment, I'm not really, bothered about the growth. I'm just kind of trying to get the hang of it. And then once I guess I have the hang of it, I can start to really focus on growth.
100%.
If I may offer a perspective from a fellow cohort member, and I understand, I can hear where you're coming from, and I think that, I mean, the common thread amongst all of us, I think there was something about Danco's proposition about selling ultimately what would be a digital product or service, doing it alone, and so that's kind of what brought all of us together with and then whatever we're interested is all unique. But what I did was I kind of went through the course material, and then I just finished this kind of mental map right here, and I kind of just like traced through the bachelor's, master's, and went back and forth until I saw it for what it is. I saw the big picture, and then that really kind of switched the gear for me and got me extremely motivated as to everything that's required in the journey. And basically this mental map, I just have the center here. I've got my personal brand, and then like the first 4 branches that come out of it is marketing, sales, domain, and methods, right? And once I was able to do that, everything makes sense. Everything was meaningful, right? And like if I've been there when you're just tweeting, and it's like and I wrote my first newsletter. I'm like, no one's gonna read this. Like no one's reading this. But just the act of publishing that first one, I'm like, well, I published the first one, right? And now I'm in it, and it's a different sort of state that I've arrived to, and I think you'll get there very shortly. I think just by going through the material and then just spending enough time right now. If you're very early, I understand, because I feel like I just kind of came out of there, but eventually, you know, given, and I give credit to Dan Koh. I think the clarity and his the openness in which he kind of guides through what the goal of all of this is very well done. So it might be well worth the effort to just go through the material many times, even front to back. Maybe even doing a mind map like I did, because the mind map now, it's just kind of this constant reminder. I keep it just in front while I'm doing everything, because everything is kind of purpose driven then.
Well, that's good. That's good to know, because
Yeah.
I was kind of, wondering if that was something I should do instead of just trying to push too much with implementation right now. And I think, that's good to know. So I'll definitely do that. Thanks.
Cool.
That's interesting. Are you able to either like post a picture of that mind map in the Discord or just send it to me?
Yeah. I actually, I was like, okay, well, this has been so helpful for me. I was even thinking about it being a content idea, as
Yeah.
you always suggest, like the world is your
Right.
oyster, right?
Yeah,
Definitely.
exactly. Yeah,
For
so
sure.
shoot that over to me, because I feel like that could be like even like suggested in the curriculum somewhere,
Yeah.
where it's like create some form of map and then show yours as an example. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah.
But
Will do.
all right. We ran through all the questions. So wait, Dan, did you have another one? Or am I just seeing the hand?
No, I just didn't take my hand down.
Okay, cool. All right, so we're good to go. For those watching the recording, this is the recording. We're ending here. But okay, yeah, that was awesome, guys. I'm not the best at hosting live calls yet or at all, but I hope that was truly valuable. I hope that everyone had a great time. If you guys have any questions relating to this, or of course anything in the curriculum at all, feel free to post in the Discord whenever. Our next call will be same time, exactly 1 week from now on Wednesday. We'll be going over more content stuff, looking over some content ideas. So we'll talk about this more, but if you have any, I would practice content very, very heavily and bring something to show. If you want to bring something where you feel somewhat confident in it, or if you have any wins pertaining to like a content piece that did really well, and we can break that down and see how others can replicate that success, that would be awesome. But in the meantime, yeah, keep doing what everyone's doing. It seems like everyone is doing well. If you're not doing well, feel free, reach out whenever. If you don't want to post in the Discord about it, feel free to DM me. I would do it on Twitter, because Discord DMs just keep changing. I don't know how to keep up with them, but yeah, thank you everyone for coming. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for hosting.
Thanks, Dan. Cheers.
No problem. Cheers, my friends.